Hi, I'm Rachel Tessman from stampyourartout.com, and I'm here to share with you my first set of alternate project ideas that I created with the December 2023 All the Best Paper Pumpkin Kit from Stampin' Up! These are the supplies that came in this month's kit. When you assemble the projects as shown, you create 9 pretty dandelion wish cards, 3 of 3 different designs, and a box for gifting the cards to another. The steps for creating those cards can be found within the direction sheet or by following the steps in the how-to video. That link, along with other kit details and creative inspiration, can be found on the back of that included pamphlet. I invite you to watch what I share today though, because I love to think outside the box and manipulate these parts and pieces of the kit to make lots of other paper crafting projects. The kits are a Stampin' Up! Product, so the colors, images, and supplies always coordinate with many other Stampin' Up! Products. All those tools and supplies that I'll be using are listed below and linked to my online store. You can also find links for learning more about paper pumpkin kits, starting your subscription through me so you can access exclusive ideas and possibly receive gifts and prizes, joining my Paper Pumpkin fan club where others are sharing their alternate project ideas, and if you're watching my video on YouTube, a link to my website to see photos of the projects that I'll be sharing today. I'll be substituting the clear block that came with my first paper pumpkin kit for Stampin' Up!'s ergonomic blocks. I'll also be using the larger version of the ink pad and some additional adhesives such as my Stampin' Seal for ease in demonstrating. By the way, if you're looking for ideas for past kits, visit my website at stampyourartout.com, click on Paper Pumpkin in the top menu, then choose Recent or Older Posts. I've been creating and sharing alternates with every kit since March of 2013 when Paper Pumpkin first began. I'm excited to share, so let's dive into my first alternate project, which is a Hidden Scenery Z-fold card. Now, this is best done with paper that has a beautiful scene to it. I figured this card was pretty darn close to that. But you can see examples of that in my blog at stampyourartout.com from my September 13th, 2023 blog post. We'll start by preparing the card base. Now this is a Z-fold card, so we're actually going to fold this card inward, and then we're going to create a Z type of shape by scoring halfway through this score line and this edge, which would be 2 1/8 inches, because half of 4 1/4 is 2 1/8. And we're going to fold this back. So it folds like that. Let's use our bone folder to give it a good crease. When I made the cards on September 13th, I had this side folded in instead, but I want to show you just a different option. All right, so there is the base. Then for the extra little part on the top, we're going to create that from this card base. So that is going to be cut at 3 inches wide, and we're going to score that at 2 3/4 inches. So halfway between this mark and this mark. This is 5.5 inches tall, so that is 2 3/4 inches. So this is an extra little piece that goes on the front of our card, and the advantage to using this piece is that it has a white inside. You could bring in the coordinating balmy blue cardstock, but it's not necessary on this card if you're willing to give up a little portion of this card base. The next part of the card that we're going to work on is the front that has the sentiment and the embellishments and all that. And I tossed around between these 3 different flowers. I mean, you could use any one of these. This is the one that I started going with, and then I said, you know what, this has a fuller leaf look. So what I did is I trimmed around this flower here. And then got this one here, which I think has a much fuller look overall. We're going to prop that onto that label piece right there. And then we'll take our Pebbled Path ink and our stamp from the set that says Hello Friend. And we're going to ink that up and stamp that down onto the label so that our flower has a little bit of room with only the leaf coming off the end just a bit. I made sure that my friend was parallel to the top and bottom edges of the card. The last thing that I want to prepare is a bit of twine. And sometimes our kits come with twine, but I'm going to grab some of the Balmy Blue Baker's twine from the 3-color pack, debuting on January 4th. And we're just going to tie a little tiny bow with that color. Twine is where I love to use the little adhesive dots that come in the paper pumpkin kits. And we have 6 of those. I can see 6 of those. So we're going to be rolling one of those up and sticking that underneath to adhere this. Now let's put this card together. It's pretty easy. So we're going to fold this way. This is going to be added here. So we want to put a couple dimensionals on the back side. We'll put them in those 2 spots, and we can put a couple more here, or we can put them where we're going to have them on the card here. I think if you line up your card with where it's going to sit, you can easily eyeball that score line and put your 2 other dimensionals within that section of the card. We'll peel off the release paper from the back side, flip it over, and now we can position that where we want it to go. The left edges are lined up with each other. And we're doing this part first because when we add this, we want to make sure that our flower, again, stays within the card edges. This will add with straight seal adhesive. And we'll center that. This one we're going to add with dimensionals. So we'll put 2 on the back side. And again, keeping that leaf within, you can tilt, you can angle, however it works for you to make sure that that flower stays within the card edges. And then this piece here just gets added with a glue dot. So now we've got our twine little bow positioned right below our flower. So cute. Sometimes you have to work with ribbons and twines to make them lie the way you want them to. All right, the very last step that I almost forgot is some embellishments. We're going to grab these transparent, balmy blue little faceted gems here. They're faceted because they have cuts like a diamond or a gem, so the reflection is really fun to see. You can see all the different sections of that faceted surface. Okay, and there we have our Hidden Scenery Z-fold card. So here is where you would write, but if you decide to open it up all the way, you can see the fun scenery within. I hope you enjoyed that idea. It's such a sweet card to give to a friend. A lot of people that create alternate projects with the paper pumpkin kits know that they need to have some cardstock and a trimmer and some basic tools on hand. Because I just cut this card base into parts and we want to still use the beautiful pieces from it. So we're going to grab our trimmer and we're going to take some extra cardstock. I'm using Mossy Meadow. We're going to cut it in half. Actually, I'm going to cut it in this direction because I want to show you a different version of it. So we're going to cut it this way, and then we're going to take one of those halves and score it this way. So we're cutting at 4 1/4, scoring at 5 1/2, and we have a card base. You can get 2 card bases from one sheet of 8 1/2 by 11 cardstock. Next, after we give that a good crease, we want to cut this down. We're going to trim it. In fact, we're going to trim off 1/8 of an inch off of all 4 sides of the front because we want it to be slightly smaller than 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. So we're trimming 1/8 of an inch here. And we wouldn't normally have to do that with layers except for the fact that this has a distinct middle to it. So we'll separate those pieces off. Now it's 4 inches wide by cutting 1/8 inch off of each side. And now we will cut an 1/8 inch off the top and off the bottom. So now we have a centered design to layer onto the front of our card. We'll set these pieces aside and we'll bring this piece back in. Now, normally you'd create like 2 card bases from this, but we're going to pretend this is a scrap right now. And we're going to cut 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 strips that are 1/4 inch in width. Because of the beautiful gold foil accenting in this kit, I'm bringing in gold foil sheets, and we're going to cut a few small little strips from that scrap that we have here. These scraps are going to be 1/8 inch in width, so they're half the width of our green strips. And from this other scrap, I'm going to use my bow punch and punch a couple leaves. I also want a layer inside my card, and I could cut up one of the envelopes or something like that, but I'm just gonna, because basic white cardstock, I have that on hand, I'm gonna cut 1/4 of a sheet, or just slightly under 1/4 of a sheet, for the inside layer of my card. And I'm also going to use a 2x2 piece on the version that I'm going to make fully for you. But before I make that full version, I want to walk you through what I did for my first version. I often don't show dies and embossing folders in my project ideas that I show publicly with my alternate paper pumpkin ideas, because I don't want people to feel like they need to buy everything, right? But the version that I've already created that I'm going to show you is using dies. I'm going to show you how to do it without using dies, but this is the die set that I used. It's the Stylish Shapes dies, and these dies cut out a shape and then leave a stitch mark on both the negative and the positive piece, or the part that's cut out and the part that's left. This was cut out of the front of my card layer. Now, to get in the exact middle, grid paper comes in very handy. So you can see we've got 2 inch up here, 2 inch up here. So I'm going to just position this so that it's between those lines. So this line here and this line here. And then I'm also going to position it so it's halfway in the other direction. So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 1 inch, 2 inch, 2.5, 2 5/8, 1, 2, 2 5/8. Okay, so this is positioned on our grid paper so that these dark lines that are crossing through here are going to be indicating where that exact middle is. Now, that's kind of difficult to make, right? So we're going to now take our paper and lay that down on top, just a straight edge or straight piece of paper, and we're just going to mark real lightly going across the center in this direction and in this direction, so that the X marks the spot. This is the center of that card layer. Then I'm going to use a Post-it note because it will stay on here, and I'm going to attach the sticky edge to the 2 corners. So I've got the 2 corners there, and in fact, let's do it the other direction as well. And you can see through it if it's held up to the light right. So I'm laying that piece down on the corner, and this one down on that corner. And now, where this little spot crosses is the exact middle. I can lay that onto our card like so, keeping everything lined up. Okay, so we've got that in the middle, and then we just have to make sure that these lines here are lining up with the lines on the grid paper, and it looks pretty darn straight to me. If it wasn't straight, it would be, angled, right? So we have our die in the right spot. You can leave the sticky notes there and run it through your machine. Okay, what you're doing is you're cutting a hole in there that's diamond shaped, and that diamond shape, again, is going to leave stitch marks on both sides. We're going to use a 2x2 piece of basic white. Okay, so now let's go ahead and stamp onto our piece here with our Pebbled Path ink. I'm just going to line this up with the grid lines again, just because I want to make sure it's straight up and down. And when I stamp onto this piece, I'm going to be looking at the horizontal lines on my grid paper to be my guide. We'll grab a D-size block and the stamp that says wishing you all the best. I like to mount my stamps crooked on my block, so I'm not looking at the edges of my block. I'm only looking at the edges of my project, or in this case, the edges of the lines on the grid paper. I'm now going to put some little embellishment pieces coming out from behind, and I went with the smaller of the two single flowers, and that's going to get tucked in back here. I'm going to use some multi-purpose liquid glue, which I've placed into a precision tip bottle for ease. I know that I'm going to have a little bit of glue up here to hold the flower. And back here, I want to put some between the stem and that square. So I think it's going to be easiest if I just lift up the square and I come in back here with some adhesive along my stem, as you can see. And now that's attached. I'm going to cut down my, my boughs so that they're a little bit shorter, because right now they're too long. And I'm going to have one tuck from behind like so. So let's just put a little bit of glue on that leaf. And the other one I think I want to attach this way, so I'm going to need a little bit of glue right here. There's not a lot holding those little pieces on, so now we're going to add our adhesive that comes in the kit, this tear and tape adhesive, and we're going to go straight over the top to reinforce that those things need to stay there. But we're not going to put any adhesive underneath these sections here. We want to now add this to the front of our card layer. So we're going to use our grid paper again and line up everything so we can use those dark lines on the grid paper as guides. I'm looking at all 4 points of my card. In fact, I may have to shift my hands a little bit so I can see them all. And it doesn't have to be perfect, but I like getting it as close as possible. So we don't have anything underneath these areas, so we can slip stuff under there because we're going to make a really fun pattern. It's called the fractured card, where it looks like the card was broken and then repaired. So to do that, we want to tape on some strips. We're going to add our strips of Mossy Meadow and our strips of gold. And I think because I did the Mossy Meadow first on my other card that I have yet to share with you, I'm going to do the gold first on these. And we'll start with this side because it's the easiest, flattest side to connect our strips to. And there we go. So that strip's going to go there. This strip is going to go right next to it, like that. And we're making sure that the edge, that the end, I should say, meets up with this edge. We can turn it over and trim off those pieces. Now we can do this side here. So we're going to add our gold and green strip, same way we did before. When I'm bringing them down onto this card layer, I'm being careful to angle them so that the glue isn't touching the surface. My fingers are definitely getting some glue on them. When that happens, you'll want to make sure that you're cleaning off your fingers every so often. Now we'll bring our card base in and we'll add that to the front of our card. And you can see how, because the border color of the card base blends into these pieces, it actually looks like these were sections that were brought into the card separately, just little corners here and there. Let's add the inside layer, which you could certainly stamp first if you want to. I'm just going to add a blank layer on the inside. And then let's grab those transparent balmy blue embellishments. So now you get to compare. You can see the difference between the two cards. This one has the center cut out, and I raised it up on dimensions so that you can get a little bit of a shadow underneath and around. You can see the stitch marks on both the blue and the white, because what I did is I brought these strips out just a 1/16 or a little bit over a 1/16 of an inch further out, so you can see that exposed blue edge that has the stitch marks all the way around. So pretty, right? This is not blue because we flipped it over. So remember, our card base piece has white on the other side. That's what I stamped on here to get the white center of that card. So if you want the results of the stitched shapes cut out instead of just a square layer that's tilted at an angle to make a diamond shape, you'll need to invest in the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine, either the regular size or the mini, and then the Stylish Shapes dies. But isn't that fun? Two different results looking very similar. This one opens in this direction. I used balmy blue on the inside, and this one opens in this direction with the basic white. I designed and shared how to make this square column fold card on my blog on September 20th, 2023. Now I'm sharing this card for two reasons. Number one is because I saw a sister type fold out there, and I'm excited to show you how to make that fold. I saw it by Lisa Curcio, and this section here is a little narrower and it comes out a little further and it folds down so that this edge here actually meets the bottom edge of the card. So I'm excited to share that fold with you, but I'm also sharing this card with you because I want to show off this stamp set. It's a stamp set that I helped to design. It's called Layering Leaves, and if you're not familiar with it, I designed it keeping paper pumpkin kits and kits collection kits in mind. I love to make alternates with kits, and so this is one of those stamp sets that if you purchase, you can use all these different sentiments and the leaves and all of that to help create alternates with any kit, because really leaves can go with anything. Leaves can go with boats and automobiles. They can go with I don't know, anything, coffee cups, right? You can put leaves under anything. So I'm hoping that you'll see the value of this stamp set. It coordinates with the bow punch, which we just used. I'll be using 4 images from this stamp set to create this next card for you. I hope you enjoy. This time I'm going to show you the finished card before we actually put it together. So you can see the front, and I'm going to turn it to its side so you can see how it works. So there we see that column that I had on my other card, right? But when you open it this way, you see a frame, a little floating type frame in there. So it's called the pop-up frame card. Isn't that fun? I love it. And here you can see this folded edge comes to the bottom of the card. So to do this card, we actually do need those dies though. So although you could probably just, cut from it by tracing a circle from, I don't know, an upside down cup or something, and then a larger cup. So you need 2 circles, and you want them cut from your envelope piece. So we're going to be using an envelope, we're going to be using a portion of this card base, and we're going to be using balmy blue for the base of our card, along with the dies and a few other things. Oh, also I want to point out that, do you remember when I trimmed that piece into 2? So here's the other piece, and that's where we're going to lay it down, is right here. So we're going to have the full one plus a partial. And do you see those little extra accents? Those are from the Layering Leaves stamp set. So let's get started with that card. We're going to first take our trimmer, and we're going to cut in this direction at 4 1/4 inches. So we're cutting our cardstock in half. And now we're going to score at 5 1/2 inches. And again, on either end, we're going to score at 1 1/8 inches. And we're scoring at that mark because we're going to be using the envelope paper. And the envelope paper, well, let me just show that to you. The envelope paper has a score line here and here, and we need to integrate that into the card. So we're scoring here at 1 1/8, so that from here to here, it's the same width. So from this score line to this score line, it's the same as what we have on the envelope. Okay, that'll make it easier to put together. Now let's go ahead and trim this envelope open by cutting off a little under or around a 1/16 of an inch off of this side. And we can do the same thing on this side too. Actually, we don't need to do that right now. But we want to cut this 4 1/4 inches wide. So here's our open area. We're bringing it to the 4 1/4 inch mark. And we can save this for another card. So now we have this piece that's going to go inside our card. We need to trim this up so that it's just 1 1/8 inches in width. So we're looking at our 1 1/8 inch mark on our trimmer, and we want this score line to line up with it. So using the lines on your trimmer again, if we're placing it here to line it up, we can eyeball that line going through, and it's between these two marks. I also see on this side of my trimmer that the edge of my envelope comes right up to that 1 inch mark. Now it's a rounded flap, so it's not going to be totally accurate, but at least that will help us for cutting. So again, I've got my top of my envelope right here at the 1 inch mark, and then I've got my fold going between those two lines, and I can cut. Something to point out is that I don't have a perfect straight edge here, but that's okay because it's going to blend in with the balmy blue cardstock. You're not going to notice it much when we put the card together. Another cut that we need to do is down here. So we need another 1 1/8 inch cut, and this time it's going to be a little bit more difficult because we don't have a straight edge. So you need to train your eyes to make sure that that score line lines up between those two marks on the trimmer. So now we have our insert piece. This will go on the inside of our card, and this will go on the front. Does that make sense? So that's how it's going to come together, like that. All right, now we need to cut the layer that goes down here, and that's going to come from this piece. So we're going to trim our card in half at 4 1/4 inches. Move those aside for now. And that piece is going to be, to fit perfectly with a little bit of blue showing, it's going to be 4 1/4 inches in that direction too. So it's a perfect square, and you notice that I did have the mostly white showing on the card because I think it's easier to stamp on a lighter piece of cardstock than a darker. So there's where that comes from. We have our pieces for the front except for these little guys here. So we're going to grab scraps from the envelope now. My desk is getting full, so I almost lost them, but you can use any of these scraps. I'm going to use the smallest, I think. And we're going to stamp on the back side, so the white side, with our little foliage piece there and some Mossy Meadow cardstock. I'm going to stamp off, which means I'm removing a layer of ink onto my scrap paper, and then I'm going to come in, oops, I forgot to use my Stampin' Pierce mat. Stampin' Pierce mat always works better with our photopolymer stamps. We're going to stamp off to remove a layer of ink, and then we're going to stamp onto our scrap one time, and let's do that again. We'll stamp it again over here. So that's plenty of space to punch out a couple of those images. Let's take our punch, turn it upside down, insert it, and line everything up. Now let's die cut circles from the center of this envelope layer. I'm going to use Post-it tape. You could use sticky notes like Post-it notes or whatever too. I'm using the second from the largest and the third from the largest, or fourth and fifth from the smallest if you want to go in that direction. We're going to just put them on top of each other, or within each other I should say, with the same amount of space all the way around, and just attach tape to hold them together. All right, now we can lay them onto our envelope and try to center them the best we can and press that tape in place. If you're new to die cutting, it's fairly simple to do. It's just an investment in the tool, and the tool does come with the plates. So you have base number 1, 2, and 3. 3 is the cutting mat, die cutting. Now we'll put one more plate number 3 on top. So you create this sandwich and it holds everything in place, and then you line it up and crank the wheel, the handle, there's a handle, and you crank that handle and it brings it through the machine and cuts where you want it to cut. Ta-da! So now we can just peel away all those layers. We have this fun frame if we want to add that to a card later on. Really pretty, but we're not using it on this one because we're going to have this frame look like, or this frame look like it's floating. So that means we need to line that up with the flower, right? Okay, let's bring our Stampin' Pierce mat in and do some stamping. So this layer is going to get the sentiment that says best wishes. So we're just going to place it where it needs to go. And I'm going to look at this line where the score mark is and that line, so that when I stamp my best wishes sentiment, it is looking straight. And I think I'm going to use Mossy Meadow ink this time. On my first card, I used the color that comes with the kit, but we already used Mossy Meadow with the foliage, so I thought I would use it again only with full ink, so a darker green. Stunning. And on this one, because it's a circle, we don't have to worry about where the straight edge should go, you know what I mean? Because we can always rotate the circle. But we want that stamped in the center of our circle, sending hugs. And then on this layer, we're going to stamp the So Happy to Celebrate You. And this is one of those stamps that's kind of like, it's an optical illusion because it makes you feel like you need to tilt it. But what you need to do is just look at the words happy to celebrate. Don't worry about the so, don't worry about the you, or it's going to throw you off on making sure it's straight. Lining up the celebrate and the happy to with the top and the bottom edges of the card and centering it the best you can will give you a very straight look on that sentiment piece. So there's that. We have all of our pieces stamped. It's time to assemble. We need to bring in one more element, and that is some acetate or window sheet, like a little strip of thin plastic. Our window sheets come in a pack of 2 12 by 12 sheets. I'm only using a 1/2 inch by 4 inches, so it can go far. You can make lots of these cards with it. All right, now we're going to take and add this to the back side. And I'm just going to use seal adhesive because I think that'll be easiest. So we'll just put some tape right in the middle here, and we'll add that. Oh, you know what? Let's use our grid paper again. That'll help out. So let's make sure that this little X here is lined up in the middle of our circle, at least going down in this direction. So I'm seeing about the same amount of squares in this direction and in this direction. So that'll get stuck down like that. And then I'm going to add some more seal adhesive right here in this spot. And that'll get attached like that. We have our window sheet coming through the center of our hole. Okay, Now let's go ahead and add the base piece, because it's going to be like this, right? So we want this piece to be right up inside the fold of the card, and the card has to fold down, so you can't put it right on top of the score line, but you want it right up against. And we also want to make sure that our edges on the sides here are lined up. Once you have that in place, you're going to fold this part back. You're going to add adhesive through here and then press it into place. Now we can take and fold our card down, and we're going to put adhesive on this section and fold this part over on top of it. And now we have our pop-up frame part of our card. When we fold it flat in this direction, it should work, and when you fold it flat in this direction, it should work. Let's add our layers. I'm watching where my adhesive is going on this strip here. I also made sure that my corners and my bottom edge lined up with the layer that I put on. So when I add this, I want to have space, an even amount of space all the way around. I want my best wishes to look straight. And there we have our little floating frame piece there, right? Okay, the front of the card is now what we have left. And for that, this will get stuck straight down. So we can just add that with seal right now. When we add it, we're going to shift it down about 1/2 inch from the bottom of our card, of our balmy blue area, because we're going to need to have room for these little guys to pop up onto. Checking my hugs to make sure that that's parallel to the top and bottom edges of the card. Okay, next this will get added to the front, and I want to have a hint of gold on that frame to be showing through. One other thing to keep in mind is I'm going to insert those green stamped leaves that I did, so I'm actually going to take this off and move it. We'll shift it back a bit. Okay, now we can add this in place. And this is going to get added underneath here. And if I need to, I can trim off a little bit with our precision tip bottle. We can add some multi-purpose liquid glue, lift this up, set it underneath, press that in place, and when it pops back up, it's going to grab onto that stamped piece and add to the flow of the design. Same thing with this piece. And there we have both finished cards. This one was done with Mossy Meadow ink, and this one was done with the Pebbled Path ink, the ink color that comes in the kit. Not too much of a difference. Such a fun card to make, such a fun card to give, and can you imagine receiving this card? What a nice card to celebrate a special day. Now that you've watched my video, I hope that you can see that with just a few extra supplies and some imagination, you can go beyond and make so much more with these paper pumpkin kits. Want to give the kits a try? They're just $23.50 plus tax per month in the US. Shipping is included, you control which months you get your kits, and there's no commitment or obligation. You'll want to activate your account by the 10th of the month in order to receive that month's kit. In fact, here are peeks at the upcoming January, February, and March kits. And as a subscriber, you can purchase refills for past kits and extra special coordinating products like the Love of Spring dies. Click on my personalized link below to start your subscription with me as your demonstrator so that you'll have access to my exclusive paper pumpkin project ideas too. Thank you so much for watching. It builds creativity to think outside the box. To access paper pumpkin kit ideas that I'll share in the future, be sure that you're subscribed to my YouTube channel and my website because I share even more each month in other special blog posts. In fact, click on my website link below so that you can access the visual supply list and view close-up photos of what I shared today. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial. Now I'd like you all to go and stamp your art out. Bye-bye.